The day HR smiled at me and said, "We're here for you," was the last day I ever believed in heroes. That's how this story begins, not with a warning, but with a promise. A warm, polished, perfectly practiced promise that made me feel safe, for about 5 minutes. My name is Lena Carver, and I'm the kind of person who color codes her calendars and apologizes when someone else bumps into me. I work hard, I follow rules, and I genuinely believe that people, deep down, want to do what's right. Or at least, I used to. For the past 3 years, I'd been a project coordinator at Brightway Consulting, a place that marketed itself as a family more than a company. And for a while, I believed that too. I believed it because of Mark Reed, my manager, the man who would eventually become the villain of this story. Mark wasn't supposed to be the villain. At first, he was the mentor I trusted more than anyone in the building. He was calm, patient, always ready with a reassuring nod or a story about how he made the same mistakes when he was young and hungry. He remembered birthdays. He brought donuts. He asked about your weekend like he genuinely cared. And I cared back. I wanted to make him proud. He saw potential in me, he said. He said I was the future of the team. He said I could go far, if I stayed close to the right people. So I did. I stayed late when he asked. Took on extra work when he said the team needed me. Covered for him when he forgot deadlines or mixed up client files. At first I thought it was teamwork. Eventually, I thought it was loyalty. What I didn't think, what I never imagined, was that he was building something with all of those favors. Something I wouldn't understand until it was too late. But back then, everything seemed fine. Better than fine. Mark championed me in meetings. He praised me to leadership. HR even emailed once, saying he'd named me a rising star in an internal survey. I saved the message, smiled at it during rough days, held onto it like proof that I was finally seen. And then came the moment everything shifted, so small I almost missed it. One Tuesday afternoon, I dropped off a status report at Mark's desk. He thanked me, but something in his eyes flickered. Not annoyance. Not disappointment. Calculation. It was gone in less than a second, replaced by his usual friendly grin. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, but I did. And that tiny flicker, that brief shadow behind his smile, was the first sign that the promise HR made to protect me wasn't a promise at all. It was a trap I hadn't stepped into yet. But I was getting close. Most people think betrayal starts with something loud, an argument, a slammed door, a confrontation that echoes in your bones. Mine started with a calendar invite. Just a simple, quiet notification that slid across my screen at 7:12 a.m. on a Wednesday. 1:1 check-in, mandatory. Sent by Mark. Tagged as high priority. No message. No context. Strange, but not alarming. At least, not yet. When I walked into his office later that afternoon, he smiled without actually smiling, like the expression stopped halfway, unsure whether it wanted to exist. He gestured for me to sit. "Lena, I've been reviewing your workload," he said, tapping a pen against his notebook. "You've taken on a lot lately." I nodded. "Yeah, but I'm keeping up." He cut me off. "I'll need you to reroute some of your client emails through me. Just for now." "Why? Did I do something wrong?" "No, nothing like that." His voice was even, but his jaw tightened for half a second. "It's just structure. A new process I'm testing." That was red flag number 1. A process that only applied to me. A process no one else had heard about. But I pushed the worry down. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he needed oversight. Maybe I was overthinking. Red flag number 2 arrived a week later. I was dropping off quarterly data in the HR portal when I noticed a note attached to my file. Not a formal warning. Not even a flag. Just a comment. Monitor performance consistency. Mr. Monitor. Consistency. The same manager who told me I was his rising star? I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe it auto-generated. Maybe HR misfiled something. But a little ache started growing in my chest, tight, stubborn, and impossible to ignore. Then came the third red flag, the one I couldn't explain away. During a team meeting, Mark praised everyone else by name. The analysts, the interns, even the temp who'd been there for 8 days. But when he talked about my work, he called it support tasks and moved on before I could even react. Later, as people packed up their laptops, he clapped a hand on my shoulder and murmured, "Don't worry about titles, Lena. Just keep doing what you're doing." It sounded comforting, but it felt like a lid being screwed on tight. I wanted to shake the feeling off. Really, I did. I told myself he was distracted, or overloaded, or dealing with pressure from upper management. I told myself he still believed in me. But late at night, lying awake with my mind racing, I kept replaying that unreadable flicker in his eyes from weeks ago. The calculation. The silence. The half smiles. Something was shifting. Not fast enough to see clearly, but enough that I could sense it, like a storm hiding just behind the horizon, waiting for the moment I looked away. I wish I could tell you the truth hit me like lightning. Fast. Blinding. Unavoidable. But it didn't. It crept in quietly, like mold under wallpaper. Slow, patient, growing in places I never thought to look. It started with an email. Not even one sent to me. I was preparing a handover packet for a new client when I noticed a strange folder in the shared drive. Hidden, but not well. Labeled in the most suspiciously boring way possible. I almost didn't open it. Almost. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when you've been living with tension under your skin for weeks. Inside were 3 PDF files. The first 2 were harmless. The third one wasn't. Performance Concerns, Lena Carver. Authored by Mark Reed. Submitted to HR. Timestamped a month ago. My heart started pounding before I even clicked it. The document wasn't long. Half a page, maybe, but every sentence sliced at something I'd worked years to build. Frequently misses details. Struggles with communication. Shows inconsistency with client management. Requires supervisory review. Supervisory review. The same new process he'd assigned me. And then, at the bottom, promotion. The one he'd been telling me, reassuring me, I was perfectly positioned for. I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. I felt disoriented, like the ground had tilted and no one warned me. I wasn't just being sidelined. I was being sabotaged. And the worst part. HR had this memo the whole time. They smiled at me in the hallway. They thanked me for being such a team player. They scheduled our support meetings like everything was normal. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting him. The man they thought was a respected manager. A rising leader. A model supervisor. I felt my throat tighten, rage swallowing the confusion I'd been drowning in for weeks. Every extra hour I worked. Every deadline I rescued. Every time I covered for his mistakes. He'd used all of it, not to support me, not to lift me, but to build a case against me so clean, so subtle, HR didn't need to question it. I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or hit something. Instead, I just sat there, staring at my own name in that report. Feeling pieces of myself, trust, hope, belief, crumble like ash around me. Then I saw the final line. Termination. Me. The employee he called a rising star. Suddenly, everything went silent. My breath. My thoughts. Even the faint hum of the office AC. I closed the file slowly, deliberately. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From clarity. Because in that quiet moment, heartbroken, furious, betrayed, I felt something shift inside me. A new emotion. Sharp. Focused. Dangerously calm. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my revenge. I didn't go home right after finding the memo. I should have. A normal person would have. But instead, I walked to the farthest corner of the parking lot, sat in my car, and let the reality of it all finally crush me. The tears came fast, silent at first, then shaking, then uncontrollable. The kind of crying that feels like your body is trying to expel something toxic. Because that's what it was. A toxin. His lies. Their complicity. All of it. For 3 years, I'd poured myself into this job like it was some kind of purpose, something that defined me. I believed loyalty mattered. I believed integrity meant something. I believed Mark saw potential in me. But he didn't see me at all. He saw a tool. A shield. A convenient name to write on problems he didn't want to solve. And now he wanted to end my career before it even began. I cried until my chest physically hurt, until I couldn't tell if the pain was heartbreak or humiliation. Maybe both. But then, something happened. A memory surfaced. Small. Faint. Almost irrelevant. Months earlier, during one of our development conversations, Mark had said, "In this company, perception is reality. Whoever controls the narrative wins." I'd laughed back then, thinking he meant it as office wisdom. But now, sitting alone in the dark with the sting of betrayal still raw, I finally understood what he meant. He hadn't been giving me advice. He'd been warning me. He'd been telling me exactly how he planned to bury me. And that realization snapped something inside me. My breathing steadied. My heartbeat slowed. The panic draining, replaced by something colder. Sharper. Because if perception was reality, then I didn't need to fight him on his turf. I just needed to expose him on mine. I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app, and typed one sentence. Hands still trembling, but now with purpose. Find the truth. Follow every thread. Burn the lies down. Then I started listing everything I knew. Every time he'd forgotten to include me in emails. Every instance where I'd cleaned up his errors. Every contradictory thing he'd told HR about my performance. Every colleague who'd quietly confided to me that something about him felt off. Piece by piece, the puzzle wasn't just forming. It was damning. As I typed, the anger reshaped itself into resolve. The heartbreak hardened into clarity. The pain, God, the pain, became fuel. I wiped my face, straightened my posture, and caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked exhausted. But I also looked awake. Really awake. For the first time, I wasn't the loyal employee hoping for approval. I wasn't the naive coordinator waiting for a promotion that would never come. I was a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to uncover. And as the parking lot lights buzzed overhead, I said it out loud, not a whisper, not a wish. A vow. I'm not done. Not until every single lie he told collapses, and everyone who protected him faces the truth. Justice wasn't optional anymore. It was inevitable. Revenge doesn't start with fire. It starts with silence. The next morning, I walked into Brightway Consulting like nothing had happened. Hair neat. Smile polite. Heart made of steel. Mark glanced up from his desk when I passed by. He gave me that easy, practiced grin, the one he wore like armor. Morning, Lena. My return smile was perfect. Controlled. A smile he'd never know was sharpened by the knowledge of every lie he'd written about me. He thought I was still fooled. Good. Let him believe that I started small. First, Erin, the finance assistant, observant, cautious, but honest. She'd once whispered that Mark took credit for things that didn't smell right. I asked her for a favor. A harmless one, on the surface. Can you pull timestamps for the Q3 revisions on Project Luna? Just for accuracy checks. She didn't question it. When she emailed the files later, her side note said, "Interesting edits. You okay?" I didn't respond. Not yet. Next, I talked to Ray, the IT tech who practically lived under his desk. I brought him coffee, black, 2 sugars, and casually mentioned that I needed help restoring accidentally deleted folders. He smirked. Mark again. I didn't confirm or deny. I just let his assumption hang there. He restored the folders anyway, and then quietly sent me a zipped file titled, Auto Backup, Read Edits. My pulse jumped. I didn't open it. Not there. Not yet. With every file I gathered, every discrepancy I uncovered, a bigger picture emerged. One Mark couldn't explain away with charm or empty praise. But revenge isn't just about evidence. It's about timing. And the perfect opportunity revealed itself when HR sent a calendar invite for my performance review follow-up. Mark was CC'd. Of course he was. He probably expected me to walk in scared, apologetic, grateful for guidance. Instead, I accepted the meeting with a single line. Looking forward to discussing recent documentation. 20 minutes later, I saw him pacing in his office. Jaw tight. Eyes narrowed. He didn't know what I had. He didn't know how much I knew. But he felt a shift. He sensed it. And sensing danger isn't the same as escaping it. When I walked out of the building that night, the air felt heavy, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Something big was coming. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I was the one setting it in motion. The day of the performance review follow-up arrived with the kind of stillness you feel before a tornado touches down. Our glass-walled conference room sat at the end of the hallway, bright, open, and painfully ironic. A place meant for transparency, that had been used to hide the truth. Not today. I walked in with my laptop, a neatly organized binder, and a calmness that made even me uneasy. Mark was already there, leaning back, relaxed, legs crossed, playing the role of the confident mentor guiding a troubled employee. HR rep Adriana sat beside him, hands folded, expression neutral in that professional without being human way. "Lena," Mark said warmly, "we're glad you're here so we can clear the air." Clear the air. Right. I sat, opened my binder, and said nothing. Adriana began with a rehearsed sigh. "Mark brought some concerns to our attention regarding your performance. We want to give you a chance to respond." I nodded. "Great. Let's start." I clicked the first file on my laptop. The room filled with the soft hum of the projector warming up. Then, Slide 1. Exhibit A, unauthorized edits made under my name. A document appeared on the screen, displaying side-by-side versions of the same report, my original and Mark's correction. Adriana frowned. "These timestamps show he edited your work after you submitted it." I kept my voice steady, without my knowledge, and while labeling the mistakes as mine. Mark chuckled, leaning forward. "Now, hold on, those were collaborative revisions." Slide 2. A chain of messages, mine, clear and detailed, followed by Mark's edits, which conveniently removed key client notes and introduced the very mistakes he later blamed on me. Adriana's brows knit together. Mark shifted in his seat. I kept going. Slide 3, 4, 5. Each piece of evidence more damning than the last. And then I opened the folder Ray had recovered. Dozens of files showing Mark rewriting my work, mislabeling errors, and submitting statements to HR that contradicted documents timestamped minutes earlier. Adriana's face changed. Suspicion. Then confusion. Then realization. "Mark, these are substantial discrepancies. And some of these entries," she swallowed, "some of these look intentionally misleading." Mark's composure cracked. "Just a hairline fracture at first. Lena, you're misunderstanding. These were management decisions." I turned to Adriana. "Would you like to read his recommendation for my termination?" I slid the printed memo across the table. She scanned it, and her jaw tightened. "This is serious misconduct." Mark's voice rose. "She's framing this. She's twisting." I opened one last file. A recording. From months earlier. His voice, clear as day. "Perception is reality. Whoever controls the narrative wins." Silence. Heavy. Inescapable. Adriana closed the folder with finality. "Mark, I need you to step out while we review this internally." Step out. The phrase landed like a verdict. He stood slowly, shaken, pale, the swagger gone. For the first time, he wasn't the storyteller. He was the story. He looked at me, eyes searching for fear, hesitation, anything. But I only stared back. Calm. Steady. Unbroken. As he left the room, the glass walls reflected his retreat, small, exposed, collapsing under the weight of his own lies. Poetic. The same transparency he weaponized was the transparency that destroyed him. In the days following that meeting, Brightway Consulting felt different, like the whole building was holding its breath, waiting to see how far the fallout would spread. Mark didn't return to his office. His mug disappeared first. Then the framed certificates. Then the nameplate. No announcement. No goodbye email. Just gone. HR didn't give me details. Ongoing internal review, confidential personnel matter, the usual protected corporate script, but I didn't need the specifics. I knew enough. His downfall mirrored the way he'd built his power, quietly, strategically, all behind glass. Except this time, the transparency wasn't in his favor. And the poetic justice? It arrived in pieces. I heard whispers from co-workers. He's been suspended. They found inconsistencies in multiple files. Leadership is furious. He was trying to pin his failures on everyone else. Everyone else. Funny how a pattern becomes obvious once someone breaks it open. As for me, HR scheduled a follow-up. This time, Adriana's tone wasn't neutral. It was apologetic. Sincerely so. Lena, she said gently, we've corrected your personnel file. Your performance ratings have been restored. And leadership wants to discuss new opportunities with you. New opportunities. The phrase hit different now, not like praise, not like validation, but like air after being underwater too long. But I didn't smile. Not yet. Healing doesn't come instantly, even when justice does. I walked out of that room feeling lighter, maybe, but not unscarred. Betrayal leaves marks you don't see until you're strong enough to trace them with steady fingers. I took a few days off, something I'd never allowed myself before. I slept. I drank coffee slowly. I watched the sunrise without rushing into survival mode. And somewhere in that quiet space, I realized something important. Mark didn't break me. He revealed me. He showed me a version of myself I didn't know existed. A version that could stand, gather truth like armor, and dismantle a threat with precision instead of rage. A version that understood a painful truth. Sometimes the people promising to protect you are the ones you need protection from. When I returned to the office, co-workers greeted me with something new in their eyes. Not pity, not gossip-fed curiosity. Respect. Real, earned respect. I passed the glass conference room where Mark once sat with his polished smile and his practiced lies. Now, it was empty. Cleared out. Honest. And for the first time, I felt the weight inside my chest ease. Not because he was gone, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. As I walked toward my desk, sunlight hit the glass just right and cast a faint reflection of me. Steady, unbroken, unstoppable. Poetic justice. Here it is. He tried to control the narrative. But in the end, I told the story. If you've ever been betrayed, by a boss, a friend, or anyone who smiled while cutting you down, tell your story in the comments. You're not alone, and someone needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this one, make sure to subscribe. The next tale starts soon. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.